need to gloom. I'm going to continue to do the exact opposite. I'm seeing nothing but good in terms of the data, in terms of the daily news cycle. Good for Republicans and bad for Democrats. And so I'm continuing to dive into this with a positive outlook. Things are looking good. In other words, things are looking bad for Democrats. And well, as we continue to analyze whatever is going on ahead of the election, the trend continues. Joe Biden is in serious, and I mean serious, freaking trouble. We are looking at a possible change of the political landscape in America. You know, for a century, the United States has been a two-party political system. It's not like third parties can't exist, it's just that they pretty much haven't. It's just kind of the way things have been. Well, that might change, at least in this election, as Joe Biden regret continues. The calls to replace Joe Biden continue. Third-party candidates, or I guess fourth and fifth-party candidates, continue to announce their candidacies, challenging Joe Biden, challenging the Democratic status quo. This spells possible doom for Nancy Pelosi and her minions. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks. So it started off with RFK and get the other guy's name, I think Cornel West, launching their presidential bids as a challenge to the leftist status quo. Cornel West, let's be honest, not really making too much noise, but you know it's possible he takes 1 or 2%. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in some polls taking up to 22% of the vote. I mean, absolutely incredible stuff. You know, possible massive impact on this presidential election. Well, we got to add more names to the list now. Now even Jill Stein announces her candidacy. She's running against Joe. Well, you know, running against Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but really running against Joe.
The U.S. role in blocking a UN ceasefire resolution is absolutely unforgivable. We call for an investigation of the Netanyahu regime's war crimes, as well as the role of Biden and U.S. leaders in aiding and abetting them. And above all, these crimes must stop now. As a Jew who grew up just after the Holocaust, with relatives who fled pogroms and a grandfather named Israel, I take never again seriously, and that means never again for anyone. For all those reasons, we demand a ceasefire, an end to the blockade, humanitarian and medical relief.
To attract young voters, hippies, stoners, unemployed people. So obviously, what does that tell you? It means that most likely the Green Party is going to cannibalize some of the younger, more woke Democrat voters, people who would have just defaulted to voting Joe because orange man bad. Some principled people will vote for the Green Party because that represents their values, instead of just giving Joe a default vote. That's going to happen.
This is it. This is John Raven with spellcasting, jump scare, superhero meeting.
That's going to happen with Cornel West. That's also going to happen with RFK Jr. And by the way, I continue to stand by my prediction that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to end up hurting Joe Biden more than Donald Trump. I know every now and then someone on Twitter will send me a poll, you know, an outlier poll, showing the exact opposite, usually from a very untrustworthy polling source. There is some data to suggest that I'm wrong, but overwhelmingly, I'd argue that the majority of the data is telling the exact opposite story. The two most recent big polls to release, specifically targeting swing states, well, aren't exactly showing a great trend for the Democrat Party and specifically Joe Biden. There's this.
Despite the ethno-immunity theories and 9/11 trutherism, there are still people in this country who think that RFK Jr. belongs in the White House. This week, the New York Times and Siena College released a poll of 6 key battleground states: Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. It found that in a three-way race, 24% of registered voters in those swing states picked RFK Jr. 33% chose Joe Biden, 35% chose Donald Trump. Digging a little deeper, that same poll found RFK Jr. beating both Joe Biden and Donald Trump among voters younger than 25. That was most pronounced among Americans aged 18 to 29. Kennedy at 34%, Biden at 30%, and Donald Trump at 29%. Another poll from Quinnipiac found Kennedy getting 22% of the vote in a three-way race, with Biden receiving 39% and Trump receiving 36%. But voters, especially young voters, are unhappy with both of the likely nominees here, and that a third-party candidate could have a real shot at disrupting this election.
As you can see in a three-way race with RFK Jr. in the mix, Trump is the clear leader. And if we look past the New York Times Siena poll and take a look at the Bloomberg/Morning Consult poll that just released yesterday, again in swing states, we see very clearly that when